Krista, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
The
States
United States of America,
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Can you do the roll call, please, Carrie?
You got it. All right. Christia Claire.
Here.
Marissa Brown.
Here.
Catherine Consalvo.
Here.
Julie Hammond.
here,
Julian Kishka.
Here.
Michael Mascola. Todd McCormick.
Here.
Sean O'Neill.
Here.
Sue Sherman.
Here.
Mark Sherwood.
Of course.
Beautiful.
Fantastic. So Michael may or may not be here tonight. He called me in a panic earlier because he has a cruise and he leaves at noon on Saturday and he can't find anywhere that will do a rapid test. So he is struggling mightily and just taking lots and lots of tests to see who gives them the results quickest. So anyway, so let's move on to the approval of the minutes. We're looking at the minutes from November 23rd. That was our week of Thanksgiving meeting. So can I get a motion to accept the minutes?
Make a motion to accept the minutes of November 3rd, 2021.
I'll make a
Nove-
second.
You might want to correct that,
That's-
Julie.
23rd.
November 23rd, 2021.
I'll make a second.
All right, discussion. Please read through them and feel free to speak up if you see any inconsistencies. Okay. All right, I'm not hearing anything, so let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of accepting the minutes for the motion? Any nays? Abstentions? One abstention. All right, motion passes. Correspondence, do we have any correspondence, Maria? That's gonna be a no.
no correspondence.
All right, delegates and individuals, that's a negative. Chris, if you would honor us with a administrative report, that'd be great.
It would be my pleasure, thank you. Timberlane Regional High School sophomores Katie O'Leary of Atkinson and Spencer Sierra of Plastow have been selected as the 2022 Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Representatives for Timberlane. Katie and Spencer were nominated by a faculty member and completed an application and then participated in interviews with the selection committee and were ultimately selected as our representatives. It's a great honor. And Katie and Spencer will represent Timberlane in the State Leadership Seminar in the spring. The seminar is designed to empower high school sophomores to recognize and apply their leadership talents and become effective, ethical leaders in our hometown, school, and community. Congratulations to both Katie and Spencer.
Fantastic, congratulations.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Tomorrow evening at the PAC, there will be an art unveiling of 9 paintings completed by members of the Art Honor Society. The students have been working on this challenge for the past 3 months, and from what I hear so far, it sounds like, the folks who teach those courses are incredibly impressed with what they've been seeing. So the paintings will be unveiled and then will later hang in the lobby, and they're 4 by 4 foot paintings. So, and I also have it on good authority. There will be a special performance by Chester and the Cuties, the winner of the variety show, in the recital hall.
Nice.
Lastly, Mealy's Meals Raffle Baskets event is still going on tonight and until tomorrow. I don't know at what time it ends tomorrow, but tomorrow is the last day to purchase tickets. There are more than 25 baskets to win. There are some outstanding baskets. Thank you. Dean's going to put up the website that you can go and purchase the tickets. There are numerous baskets with well over $100 in either scratch tickets or gift cards. There are game nights, movie nights, all kinds of, I know there are a couple of, I believe, junior prom tickets, senior prom tickets in a basket for a raffle that I know I purchased. All proceeds go to the Mealy's Meals fundraiser and to help families in need in the Timberlane community. And you can buy tickets, one ticket for $1 or 6 tickets for $5. And all proceeds go to supporting Mealy's Meals. So I believe Dean has the website up there. I'll say it anyway. It's www.timberlane.net/Mealy's Meals /. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay. Maria, before we move on, did you have any updates? Administrative updates? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, the only update that I have is that on the last school board meeting, the school board approved a position for an assistant principal at the high school. So that position is obviously not in the budget, so that is a position that will need to be added to the proposed budget.
Okay, can you tell us what that amount is?
Yeah, so we don't know exactly, remember, so as I said, it's between $105,000 and $110,000 a year,
Plus benefits.
Plus benefits?
plus benefits, which is about 30%. So it will be about $130,000 that we have to add to the proposed budget.
Okay. All right, thank you, Maria. Moving on to reports of committees. Mrs. Sherman, has the CIP committee met again since our last meeting?
No, it has not, and I would like to say publicly that when we had our last CIP meeting, we had a draft that the committee never approved. So I don't know where that went. It didn't follow the procedure that we had set up a number of years ago. I know that Dr. Farr was concerned that we were way off the schedule and the process, but we here at the Budget Committee never saw a copy of that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I don't know where we're at here, but I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that you make a request that we at least see a copy of that. And I don't know if the school board saw a copy either, but it's a living document, and we really should see it at some point here.
Is the CIP, when the committee comes to, so is it finalized, and then does it go to the school board for a vote?
It's supposed to come not only to the Budget Committee, but by the process written down, and also to the school board for, I hate to say approval, but here it is. Want you to see where we're at. And I
Right.
don't know if the committee did that.
But it's a school board committee.
It's a school board standing committee.
So generally, the committee would then
Would
come and
send someone
present to the
here,
school
yes,
board,
yes.
and then
Yes, and they
the
did
bud
not
come
do
as
that.
well. Okay.
So, and the other thing I'd like to put a plug in for is it was nice to see live music again happening at the PAC. Our musicians, just like our artists and many of our other kids, football players, et cetera, are extremely talented. And it was great to see live music there. So I'm putting a plug in for, there's some stuff going on Sunday. Guitar and concerts and band concerts with tuxedos and the whole bit. And if you were ever in a band or musical group here at Timberlane, you know, it's a great afternoon and evening. So that's happening Sunday, I believe.
Yes, I apologize, I should have mentioned that.
No, I just want to put a plug in so my grandsons can say, you mentioned music.
And if you happen to miss a performance, I'll say this, the jazz ensemble
Those were
performance,
Unbelievable.
preceded by the rock ensemble, just truly remarkable. Best I can tell, 9 out of the 36 or so state spots, Steve Finnegan talked about this at one of the board meetings. But after, being there for that performance, best I can tell, they just figured they better include some kids from some other towns because the talent in our music program is outstanding. So, and that's online, you can see those all of the performances are recorded. Please, feel free to take a look. You're going to see some outstanding performance, and I guarantee you, when you watch those things, you'll be trying to make a trip down here to see our students perform, because as my wife said, she's like, that was amazing. That's like free professional entertainment available to everybody here, right down the road for some of us and not far away from most.
I always like to tell parents also that, many people don't know this, you can actually, if all you need is a Vimeo account, and you can download it all. So like, if you don't want to sit there with your camera and record and
Right.
want to enjoy the
hold it
concert,
like
it doesn't take long till it's uploaded. You can go download it and just add it to wherever you keep all that stuff.
Yeah, and the tech department does a great job, making sure they're zooming in on soloists and all that, so outstanding, just so impressive.
Just one possible suggestion if we could recommend to them, is creating like an album and stuff. Is that, if I could download it and to my phone and listen to it in the background and
Yeah.
stuff, that would be nice. I mean,
Yeah.
not in the video sense, I mean, it's nice to see them play, but it's hard to do that while you're driving.
I'm telling you, some of the groups, you would think they were, they're so professional, you'd say, is that
Yeah.
a group from New York? Oh, no, that's the Timberlane Jazz Band.
Yeah.
And it's those
No, they
groups.
could play all the different genres, Christmas, times. You could come up with a Christmas album. I mean, just, some thoughts.
Oh, that's a good idea.
But it was
I
great
will
to
t-
have them live there again. Super, super great.
Okay, thank you, Sue and Chris. Moving on, any reports from you, Mr. O'Neill, from the school board?
Well, we had a somewhat interesting meeting last time, but part of the interesting stuff that came out of it that I think that this committee would be, wanting to know, is that the SAU 55 the whole financial aspect has already been addressed. And correct me if I'm wrong, Maria and stuff, I'm just gonna give me some of the numbers. After we paid all of Timberlane's regional school district's long-term liabilities within SAU 55, we returned out of the unreserved fund balance of the last audit of SAU 55, it was just shy of $200,000 coming back to Timberlane. So the talk that had preceded years, of going through this process, that it was going to cost us millions of dollars, now this is actually proving that those statements were inaccurate and wrong. And it was just as the school board said it was going to be a cost savings, and we were going to be getting funds back.
So that's coming back to the Timberlane,
School district.
the district.
And that's after everything's been done, the audit, and all that stuff. And Maria, I want to give her a big applause for that. She's basically spearheaded that and did really an awesome job of getting that to finally come together.
Okay. All right, thank you, Sean. All right, moving on, unfinished business. I don't think we have any unfinished business, do we, Maria? No. All right, so now let's get to what we're here for. So we have a meeting tonight, and we have a meeting on the 23rd. Is my math right? What's today? Yep.
23rd.
A meeting on the 23rd. So, this night and the 23rd, typically our last meetings of the year. In years past, this has been the last meeting of the year. There's been times where we go to the very end. Either way, we have to wrap it up by the end of this year, because the next meeting after that is the public hearing. And that's in January, I think it's January 15th. At the PAC, where we sit on the stage with the school board, we present the budget. We present this budget, whatever this budget looks like at the end of tonight, whatever this budget looks like at the end of the 23rd of December. So we were presented with the budget on the 23rd of November. Maria has given us more than I've ever seen since I've been on the budget committee to help us analyze. We've got pie charts, we've got line graphs, we've got trending going back 10 years, so that, like we said in the last meeting, we can, we can smartly look at the budget and try to predict without the pandemic, with the pandemic, what things look like before and how they trended before this nasty pandemic ruined everybody's lives. For now, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the number that we have here, and then a second, and then we'll discuss. And then from that point, we can take action to either reduce, increase, and see where we are from that point. So, but in order to discuss this, I think we should put it on the floor, and then we can have a discussion and try to get to where we need to get. If it doesn't get resolved tonight and we want to go into that next meeting, then we'll do that. But I think we have a lot of tools here, and hopefully you've been able to look through them. I mean, look at this thing here. I mean, so if I could see that get to the floor, then we'll start discussing, and then we can adjust the motion. We can vote it down. We can do a new motion. But I think we're at that point now where we want to get to a number that we can, move on to the public hearing for the voters.
So I'll make a motion to accept the 2022-2023 budget as presented by the administration of $75,623,607.
Can I ask you to adjust?
Where's that number from?
You said 75,000, Sean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That would be a heck of a year.
I'm sorry.
How do you get the millions open?
Maybe subliminal thinking. I don't know. $75,623,607.
All right, do we have a second? Second from Marissa?
Which page, because there's numbers of pages that.
I'm doing page 19, the requested one, which is at the very end.
Okay, I was looking at the pie chart.
Single page.
This one? I
This
see
one.
it, okay,
It's on the last page of this one.
gotcha. So say it again, Sean, 75, 623, 607?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Marissa seconded. Okay, now let's move to discussion. Thoughts on this number? I'm gonna open this up and let anyone, just let me know that you wanna speak, and then talk it up, talk it down. Sean?
As we haven't talked about this as a school board level, so I have, with respect to that, I have no comment from the school board's perspective. I'm assuming that they, Dr. Farah and Maria were probably involved in a lot of this, putting this together. And, I'll leave it at that, so it's a great starting point.
Okay.
Yeah, my comments, as I had said to the group last time we met, that if you hadn't watched all the stakeholders make their presentations, it was really worth going back and watching the Vimeos. I was impressed with the presentations. I've been impressed with the paperwork, Maria, this time around. Nicely done. I do like pie charts a lot. That this is a really good number, and if we needed to add $130,000 more for another assistant principal at the high school, I think this budget has $130,000 in it, that we wouldn't have to add another amount to this bottom line. I really think you've got enough in here. That's my opinion, based on looking at the numbers over the last couple of weeks. I'd be very satisfied recommending that number to go forward,
That's a good point, Sue.
unless Maria has something she wants to
Marissa?
that would change my mind.
I'm gonna let everyone
Yeah.
throw some comments around here, and
Okay.
then we'll have Maria jump in.
So, obviously new here, but I have a couple questions. When we talk about the CIP, and I watched the meeting from last week, I think Sue, you said the CIP is not in here, is that correct?
I
'Cause
believe-
it's a separate,
So it's not specifically in here because it wouldn't be. We don't call it out like a
Okay.
line item, like CIP is going to be this.
Okay.
Okay. The CIP is a list of things that the district desperately needs.
Yep.
They're prioritized by year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, probably beyond 5
6,
even,
7.
right? It's a large number.
Yep.
Just the year one alone is a large number. The whole thing is a humongous number, which obviously
Yep.
we wouldn't put year 1 or year 1 through 5, or you might as well just let everybody, no one's gonna vote for that, ever,
Okay.
right? I mean, that's just tens of millions of dollars for the whole CIP. So, but to answer your specific question, and we'll have Maria go into some more detail on this, but there is money allocated in this budget for facilities, for capital expenses, okay, to the tune of somewhere around $1 million. Every year in the last 3 to 4 years that I've been on here, we have made it a point to make sure that we're getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million into the budget so that we can use that. Is it enough? Is it gonna tackle year 1 of the CIP? It is not.
okay,
However, and Maria, feel free to paint in some details here, but that 75,398 that you see for the FY 2022 voted is inclusive of what was voted for in the fall for that special meeting. Okay, so that means that this year we already had $1 million in the budget that passed in March, and then almost another $1 million added in September, and that extra $1 million was specifically voted to allow it to be used this year and next year.
okay,
Okay, so I'm not saying it's perfect math, but if you took half that and allocated it for this year and next year, technically you could say that we're looking at roughly about $1.5 million.
Okay.
It's not the 4.5 from the CIP, and we can certainly discuss that more. I know we don't have the detailed report, and I'm just throwing that number out there because I thought I remember you say that, Sue. It was somewhere in that neighborhood, right? We're never gonna, I mean, it's never gonna be the whole nut, but we can certainly discuss that. But it is built into
built
there,
in,
it's
okay.
just not specific,
so that
right?
makes sense, thank you.
So it'd be up to the administration to say, okay, we have $1.5 million that got approved in March. How are we gonna apply that to the priority year one things in the CIP?
Okay, thank you.
Well summarized.
Thank you. Did I leave anything out on that, Maria?
No, that was very well summarized.
Can I ask a couple more? Sorry.
Of course, yeah.
So when I look back to one of our meetings in August and we got the preliminary unassigned fund balance amount. So I understand that money then goes back to the taxpayers, right? That's money that wasn't used in the budget per se from the school district? I guess I'm looking at this as like where did that money go? Like why can't we apply it to next year? But that's also me coming from a private sector brain, so I don't know. how-
I'm gonna let Maria answer that question.
Can you say the question again? It's really hard to hear you.
Sure. What happens to the unassigned fund balance?
It goes back to the taxpayers.
So there's no way to move that to a next year's budget?
It goes to offset the tax rate when they're setting the tax rate.
Correct.
It's kind of the starting point.
Yeah.
You have a little bit in your account. I'm looking for Sean to give me any kind of acknowledgement that I might even be on the right track. It's,
Yeah,
It's kind of a
it's
starting
basically, you know, you have a dollar amount in, it's a lot of it is accounting aspects of it.
right,
But at the end, you have all this, you have an unassigned some fund balance from the previous year. Then you go through an audit. That audit produces saying that you had, you know, X dollars that wasn't spent. So then now you take that and you add that to the unreserved fund balance. That amount grows to a new unreserved fund balance. Then you say, how much of that unreserved fund balance am I going to use to offset the taxes? And then you subtract that amount, and now you got even a new unreserved fund balance. And then that's the one that propagates to the following year.
Thank you.
But it's how much you want to take and retain of that. And think of it as a lot of it is cash flow. When you have a budget, 75 million, legally, we could spend $75 million in 1 month. I mean, practicality says that ain't gonna happen, but there's going to be cash flow analysis that they have to do, and just think of it as the tax receipts, because the monies are coming in from the town on a monthly basis, and there's different amounts that they do. And that was all developed looking at the cash flow models of the school district, so that they didn't have to put, take the same dollar amount and level fund it across all the towns as payments. They can take that and sort of, for example, right after, December bills are due, this is where we have one of our bigger town payments that you'll see. So then, because they know that we're all getting that influx of cash into ours, so then now we can pay more of that bill. So a lot of this is predicated on all those kind of things. And towns have the same sort of thing. It's an unreserved fund balance, and they are able to retain that same amount and do the same kind of operations. But a lot of it has to do with cash flow, and it's an accounting
Okay, thank you.
purposes as well.
But isn't there a restriction though on the amount that you can keep over from 1 year to the next? Because
Correct. At a town level, you can keep anywhere from, the minimum is 5, and you can go all the way up to 17%, and it's 17% of the total amount paid for a budget. So which, from our town level, is not just the town's operating budget, which is what predominantly everybody thinks of. It's the sum, even the school payments. So 17% of roughly town of Danville's is about $10 million, say 3.5 of operating budget, and 7, 8, for the school district. So you could take up to 17%. So we could have $1.7 million if we take the 17% for that example. But in what we do is, at the town, we're actually less than 5%, which is actually lower than what they recommend. And it's all due to the cash flow. We watch what we're doing. It's how we pay our bills and stuff. And as we, if you think of how this is going to work, just become the tax time, you're running out of money, you get the tax bills going on, and it goes back on up. Well, if you're watching all their bills and you're paying them accordingly, as you're starting to ramp down, you start to then move them out and say, hey, do I pay this 1-2 weeks later when the cash flow starts coming in and stuff? And you do stuff like that. You don't have to keep a higher unreserved fund balance, and then therefore more of it could go back to the taxpayers, and they get the benefit of that. But it's, with all these systems, they all got to be working in series, and that's why I used to, I'll be honest, it's one of the reasons why I used to harp on the school district to get all this stuff in there, because as that pipeline got delayed, our tax bills got sent on out farther, our cash flow is going down farther and farther, and at some point, you're going to have to go out, and what they do is they call it a TAN, a tax anticipation note, which then each municipality goes on out and borrows money on the tax receipts that it's going to get. It's got to pay interest, pay, the applications fees and all this other stuff, and it just creates other issues and stuff. Some towns have had to do that. In my tenure on the board for 15, 18 years, whatever it's been now, is we've only had to go out once. So,
But Timberlane hasn't had to do that. Hasn't had to
No.
do that.
no, they have not had to do that.
What did the board retain? The school board retain, Maria, from that delta back in June? I think you voted on that, right?
$500,000,
$100,000.
$500.
$500,000. Okay.
Yeah. So for school districts, the RSA 198.5, what it says is that we are allowed to retain up to 2.5%
Right.
of the current fiscal year's net assessment.
Okay.
So the school board has a policy that we retain, if they vote to retain, we retain $500,000, which we had retained last year and we retained this year.
And what is
The school board has voted for.
what is the balance in that fund?
What do you mean the balance?
Well, do we reuse that 500, or doesn't it get added on like a
You can
reserve?
only use it for emergency. So if we run out of, if we overspend the budget, it can be used for that, or it can be used for, so what the RSA allows is it can be used as a revenue source for emergency expenditures or over expenditures of the budget.
Right, but it adds on top of each of itself every year. So do you know what the balance is as of
Of the capital
what
reserve
we
fund?
added to the capital reserve? That's probably in there.
That's
I
capital reserve.
don't know from the top of my head, I believe it's around 800,000.
It's always about $1 million.
Yeah, this doesn't move around
I
like
don't have the
a,
treasurer report with
this
me.
doesn't move around like a checking account balance and stuff. It's more of an accounting aspect of it. And it's done at specific times where you're moving a blocks of funds around and building on that. It's not like a checking account. You write a check against it and you're all of a sudden your unreserved fund balance goes down X.
No, but don't we keep building on top of it? I mean, we haven't really used, have
Well,
we
for
pulled money
example,
from
if
it?
if we didn't, say we had, you know, a million that we got of unreserved, was the unreserved fund balance at the start. We had the account, you know, after the audit, they says that we had, you know, $2 million of surplus. That 2 million would have been added to that, produced now 3 million unreserved fund balance. And then we say, how much are we going to take away from that to offset taxes? Then the school board would then say, we're gonna take 2 million of that, or to make the numbers so that they're all not the same, say 2.25 million out of that 3 million. So then now we're gonna have a new unreserved fund balance of 750,000, and 2.2 million went to the taxpayers to reduce the tax base, and so now you're running at that. So that 750,000 is still, it's an accounting number, but to think of it, it's a good way to think of it, is just think of it as somebody's putting seed money into your
Yeah.
checking account, and you always gotta be accountable for that.
Right,
and
but
pay
don't we want
back.
that number to be higher, though? I mean, is the school board happy with 800,000? Or are we gonna add to that,
It's,
and make
it's
it a
been
bigger?
working for all these years, and how much we retain and how much, you know, we usually spend on that. It's been a consistency thing, you know, with a lot of other factors being considered into it. And I have not heard
I
anything.
think we're,
Talking about two different things,
Yeah,
right?
you are.
I
Capital
think we're talking
reserve
about two different
and
things, yeah.
unreserved fund balance are two different things. And what you're talking about, Sean, right, is you wanna try and keep taxes as level as possible in
Yeah.
all of the towns by making those adjustments using the unreserved fund balance.
Right.
I think.
I'm talking about the
the
part they
capital
vote for
reserve.
to add to the capital reserve.
Correct, right. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I'm
So,
saying.
yeah, we're talking about two different things. So one thing is the capital reserve. That's
Yeah.
the one that has about $800,000, which
The
is,
emergency fund.
if we have capital money left, the board can vote to retain up to $250,000 of that money and put it into the capital retained fund, which is the one that is held by the trustee of the trust fund.
Right.
And that one is the one that has a balance of about, I believe, $800,000. Then the other one is the fund balance retention, which is the annual retention that is held, $500,000 is held on an annual basis, just as an emergency fund for the district.
Okay, that's, I
They can
was not
vote
making.
different amounts.
Right,
You
right.
don't have
I
to
was
vote
getting
500.
mixed on up.
So
I
the
didn't speak.
raw surplus, i.e. the difference between what was spent and what was budgeted, before that went back to the taxpayers, 250 went to the capital reserve and 500,000 went to the,
Was capital.
To the fund balance
to the fund,
retention.
Yes,
balance,
the rest
yes.
went
The
back.
two hundred and
rest went back.
fifty though, the $250,000 though can only be retained if the apportionment in the budget for capital. So if we have anything left out of the $1 million that we have in the budget, we can reserve that. If we don't have anything left and we spend the whole million in capital, we cannot reserve the 250,000, which is what happened last year.
Right, which we
There was
did.
money
Yep.
and we didn't have enough.
Yep.
That's happened a few years. We didn't
Yeah.
have enough. We put
Mm-hmm.
up
The
to
last 2 years, we could
250,000.
spend
We
it.
didn't have 250,000.
So the long way around to answer your question, Marissa, is the bulk of the surplus goes back to the taxpayers, and they're to the towns, and there's restrictions on taking all of it, right? So that's why not all of it can be like rolled forward into the next year. But the effect is it's still going to reduce the burden on the taxpayers, just like it would if you reduced the next year's budget because you carried that money over. It just works in a different way.
Thank you.
I think what we've heard, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think what we've heard through the years is, you know, you had 3 million left over at the end of the budget season. You know, that's terrible budgeting. You know, well, if you
It's
had
fantastic.
$75 million and you only had 3 left after you had spent, that's pretty, at the end of the year, that's a small cushion. You need to make sure, you don't wanna spend right to the bottom dollar. But you can't go over that, we can't overexpend.
So that brings up my next point that I want Maria to talk about. So Maria built this table to show us trends over 10 years. Okay? But I would like Maria to discuss the fund transfer that she added in and why I had her update this table. Okay? Because when you look at it without those fund transfers, it looks like we have 9% left, and that's just not true. Okay? This is representative, this trending is representative of the surplus that goes back to the taxpayers, okay? After all is said and done, the real actual versus the real voted, so that we can have a good understanding over a 10-year period how much goes back. And I like that you use the bigger number versus the smaller percentage number to represent the surplus, because to Sue's point, we're spending 97% in fiscal year 2020, 96% in 21, 95%. It's a big number. It is a big number, but it is what's necessary to run the district, and this is the true representation of what the surplus is that goes back to the taxpayers. So I'm gonna let Maria discuss kind of for some of the newer people, what the fund, why from an accounting perspective, you don't include that in the budget, right? The other long legal, but why it still matters, Maria, please.
So, from the accounting perspective, we have different funds in our books. The general fund is the big fund where the operating budget resides. And then aside from the general fund, we have one fund for food service, we have one fund for grants, and then we have one fund for the PAC operations. So we transfer money between the funds, but by statute, we need to include in the operating budget the provision of the money that we think we're gonna need to provide food service for the students and the federal programs. So those are the lines that you see in the budget that are the fund transfer lines, which they have a budget, but when we actually incur the actual expenses, those expenses get booked under the individual funds. So they're not booked under this 100, under the general fund, they get booked under the food service fund or under the federal grants fund. So that's why they're not part of the actual numbers on the general fund, but they are part of the budget. So at the end of the day, if you look at it in the first page of the big report, the one that has the graphs, like the
Yep,
fifth line down,
the trend
that's fund
report.
transfer. If you see, pretty much we spend almost everything, or even some years a little bit more of what was budgeted for those lines. But those expenditures, when you look at if you look at the audit report, they're not part of the general fund. They're part of their individual funds.
Thank you, Maria.
But when you add those actual numbers, like Todd and Sue were saying, we get to the bottom line where you see that we have been consistently spending an average of 96% of our budget, which is very good budget practice. I mean, when you leave 3 or 4% of your budget unspent, that's very good budgeting. That really is.
Right.
To that point, Maria, isn't there a certain percentage that our auditors recommend that is built into the budget that way, that based on the total budget amount, whether it's 2%, 3%, or something like that? Is there a specific recommendation that they've made for that unreserved fund balance, and essentially that, that quote-unquote cushion, that they typically recommend that you're budgeting that amount that's going to be there in the event of something cataclysmic?
I think that.
Yes, they do, I don't know specifically if it's a percent, they leave it up to discretion, but they do recommend to budget for that. I mean, that is like in any other budget, that's the cushion of your budget, right?
Yeah.
It's a contingency that you have in case you overspend or, well, so you won't overspend. So yeah, it's the contingency to the budget.
Are we still using the same audit firm?
I'm sorry?
Are we still using the same audit firm?
Yeah, Flotsky. Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know if the year that Sean was chair, but the year that I was chair and I worked with their auditors, 3 to 5% was what they were, maybe not formally saying, but certainly informally saying as they were working on our documents.
Right.
That having that kind of 3 to 5, and so if we're at 96% as a, I think that's excellent for us to look at, that we're not.
I do as well. I mean, you can go back 10 years here and see that, I mean, FY14, wow. I mean, that was dicey, actual versus voted, but certainly there's been some years where it's dipped lower and there's been a larger surplus, but I think FY21 is kind of right in the sweet spot.
18 there we were,
Yep. Yep.
we had a little budget that year.
Yes. So, okay. Let's keep it going. More discussion.
Did that help did that help you,
thank you. That was
Marissa?
great.
It's almost conceptual money. It's not, it's on the books, but it's not in my hand. I got a check for $140,000 back for my, the towns don't get a check back.
Yeah, thank you.
They'd probably like that, but.
What are we thinking about the number, folks? I'm looking at FY22. We're essentially level from FY22 to FY23. The one big question mark on being on the budget committee is this is all happening 18 months from now. Okay?
Hard.
So, I should say it's all going to be trued out. So we're predicting something that is almost. I mean, it's not possible to predict it. We're doing the best we can. But the other thing that you're missing in the math equation is that you only have FY 2021 to go off of. We do not have this year because we won't know until what, July?
Maybe.
July
Maybe.
or August, yeah.
August.
We'll have a good guess in June, but the chips don't fall until sometime in the July-August timeframe of 2022. So we have to make some assumptions based on trending and assume that the administration and the school board are moving us to a point where we're gonna be similar to the previous 9 years, and that what was voted in March is going to be what the district needed to operate. Comments, questions, Mark?
One thing that had jumped out at me, and again, the graphs are absolutely fantastic. When we look at the student services, the two major increases from 2013 to 21, the special education tuition and the transportation, those are the ones that, are the most vertical for increases. Is that, with a declining student population, though perhaps not special education population, I'm trying to figure out what is accounting for the transportation cost going up disproportional to our student population. Now, I know we've talked some about the busing issues that we've had in contracting, but those two lines just seem to jump out at me. And when we look at this year's proposed budget compared to last year's, the special education tuition being at 3.6 proposed for 2023 and 3.6 for 2022, in transportation just eking up a little bit. It seems like that is one of the trends. Our special education costs have gone up. And, forgive the ignorance, is it because we're offering greater services, or our population
is increasing in the special education needs compared to history. I think that's where it is, but I don't know.
Chris, could you address special ed and then Maria, transportation? Go ahead, Chris.
She may want me to do transportation
you
as
can
well,
do
'cause I
both.
do transportation
All right.
also. Combination of things, right, for special education. The costs of services has gone up dramatically in the last couple of years, where I think we spoke about this a little bit last time, right? The increase in the hourly rate for speech and language services or occupational therapy, physical therapy, all of those kinds of related services, those contracted services have increased dramatically. For, in some cases, 10, 15, I've seen as much as almost 20% with some service providers, especially those service providers that there are fewer of, and there's a greater demand now than ever. So it's that combination of
Is that-
increased demand, lower supply of providers, especially during the pandemic. We've seen that, and, we have no reason to believe that it's going to decrease because
Which was part of the question. We did decrease it for this year's proposed compared to last year. So that had been my assumption. The trend was they're just more expensive to hire. We need these people
Yes.
for their services, yet we're budgeting less.
yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out.
Yes, so there are a number of students who were placed in out-of-district placements that were receiving related services. And so you see,
Yes,
there
and
was
we've
a
had this
little dip with
conversation before,
tuition,
I'm remembering.
right? And then, so, the services following the students, we had a number of students move. So we're not, we don't fill in and say, well, these 4 students are no longer here unless we know, you propose a budget for special ed, just like you do all other students, on actuals, not on, well, maybe. You always have a little bit of an increase because you can't be caught without the funds. You have to budget the funds for things like special education aid, for example. You can't be reimbursed or recoup or apply for funds if you didn't already spend them, those kinds of things. And that special ed aid's its own meeting probably, if anybody ever.
Could you expand on, it's more of, because I know you'll know and I know the numbers roughly too, but it's the actual cost of out-of-district placement cost and how much that is per student. And just like, 1 or 2 students that, as a pipeline, they graduate, they're no longer gonna be there. That's how you could take it off of the budget.
Yep.
And if they were out-of-district placements, the tune of how much dollars ranging?
It can range from, in the $50,000, $60,000 range to $200,000,
Exactly.
or even more if
We
there's a
have
reason.
seen warrants that we've had to sign as a board member that have those to the schools,
Okay,
respective
so a
schools.
trend of 6 or 7 students could make potentially a huge impact.
Huge, which,
Answers the question.
And-
6 or 7 students that have a high need for special services on that, you're probably could be easily looking over $1 million for that.
Well, yeah, just looking
easily.
At the special education budget presentation, in 2.9 expended, it was 1.3 million for tuition for private and other, and this year it's 2.1 million.
And then you also got to add on the busing aspect of that.
Yeah,
and
that's just the
all that stuff.
tuition,
So
right,
And then you add
it
on
does.
getting
And,
those
and
places.
the best way to try and manage that is to develop programs within the district. First and foremost, in order to develop programs, you need the space. We have the space. Budgeting for the development of programs is difficult because you're looking so far in advance. There's a number of things that have to happen with application for program approval and things like that, none of which is insurmountable. That, those are things that can be done. However, it's hard to just come forward and say, we want to develop a program, so we want all of these positions. So we said we are not going to be proposing new positions for that. I've done a lot of program development in the past. There are different programs that to do so through contracts with contracted service providers is more advantageous, both fiscally and educationally. And I won't go into the details why unless you really want them, but that's probably be a whole nother presentation as well. But the best way that I've found to start these programs is using federal funds and start to pilot programs, looking at students with similar needs, identifying those needs, identifying the type of programming they need, And really, and Kelly Brooks and I are of like minds with this, and we have been starting to really look at that. We want to get through our special ed audit piece first, which will help us identify the type of programming that we need, but also look at the resources that we currently have and see what we can do in first to reallocate resources. We have a lot of talented educators here. We used to have programs in place. Things changed, and there were, they made some movement along the way, but it's really time to revisit that and look at how we can provide better educational programming for our students. And typically, it's better because it's in your community, and public schools are where you have very talented, certified educators. In private special education approved programs, not all educators need to be certified, so doing so here, they're in their community, they're with their peers, it's beneficial to all students, it's beneficial to our teaching staff, and, our staff in its entirety, so we're going to be, moving along in that trajectory to be able to start to make some recommendations for programs that we can develop here.
But in developing here, there's an increase in the budget just in a different spot. Like you're going to, say one of these students is costing $50,000. It's not like you're saving $50,000 by having them come here. They're probably gonna have a one-on-one. They're probably gonna have related services. They're probably going to have, you know what I mean? So it might save some money, but not necessarily. to
Not
have-
startup.
Yeah.
Startup, it's gonna be
Yeah.
an expensive proposition.
It depends on the type of program, it depends on the services, it
Yeah.
depends where the placement is. But I can tell you, for example, I think I talked about New England Center for Children was a program, partner classrooms that I brought in to Derry, started with ERA funds. Anybody remember ERA funds? And started with 5 students, 1 classroom. A classroom in that program can only have 8 students. There are now 4 elementary classrooms, 2 middle school classrooms, and 2 high school classrooms in Derry, but started with just 1 classroom. And students in those programs are getting the services from a combination of resources, most of which, or at least half, more than half, are from New England Center for Children, where if you send them to a New England Center for Children Center, tuition costs somewhere in the $120,000 to $180,000 range. And we were doing it at 52 to 60% of that cost. My opinion is, all other services are equal within those classroom settings between that and the center. Kids are not driving an hour and a half on a school bus away. They're maybe not in Timberlane, might be different, where they might not be in their exact town. They might, but within the district. And they're with peers, in non-disabled peers. It allows for the promotion of better understanding. And I don't like to use the term inclusion. I think I explained that one. My old colleagues said, everybody belongs, so why are we saying that people should be included? So I like to say that it promotes belonging, that, that understanding as community members, we all belong here, and we just need to create the supports and services to allow everybody to be successful. Can we do it for everybody? No, unfortunately, sometimes you just can't. But can we do it for a far greater percentage of our population? We can. There are, not to discredit, there are some great schools out there that provide services to students, but the complicating factors and, getting kids to and from and not being in their community, if we can remedy those complicating factors by providing the appropriate supports. You can't do it with half measures. You got to do it the right way. You can't say, and that's why, contracting, it has a lot to do with collective bargaining and things like that that you want to avoid. Don't get me started on it. I can just go all night on this stuff, but
Sense that.
it's not incredibly easy, but it's incredibly fruitful when it's done correctly, just like anything. If you do it well and you do it correctly, ultimately, the costs can be less.
But it's something that's gotta play out.
Well, and be
Yeah, well, we're-
well-planned and
That's right. You can't just jump into it and say, oh, we're gonna have a program.
we're gonna take
Catherine,
this
okay,
to
you're the teacher now.
Yeah.
There's a lot
I
of,
agree.
right, there's a lot of professional development, there's, like I said, with contracting that fills some of the voids, like now Catherine goes out on a leave for some reason. You can't just bring a substitute into a very specialized program. So there are different things to look at.
Chris, a couple comments and questions. First of all, a comment is, I mean, if you look at that line and go back 10 years, we've really, really threaded the needle. Really, really threaded the needle. And some years we've gotten hit, with, to the tune of like 600,000 one year. I think FY20. Yeah, FY20. So my question to you is, we did raise it up last year for the FY22, this current year that we're in, and you did the presentation for special education for us a month and a half ago, I think that was, so maybe a month ago. Do you feel like that is a solid number based on how things are going this year thus far, from a budgetary perspective? And in that 3,652,000, is there the beginnings of starting to try to build what you were just talking about in that 3,652,000? Or is that just tuition? So there's none of that money is allocated towards building out this program.
Correct.
Where would that money be budgeted, or is it not?
So we didn't really budget it.
Okay.
Ideally, I think, or the safest way to do it and the most responsible way to do it is to ultimately move positions from the IDEA Part B federal grant into the budget. So we didn't want to do that because we're not prepared for it. Kelly and we don't want to come forward and say, hey, we have a dream and we're going to develop this program and we want to move, because what goes on here, historically what's been going on anyway, the IDEA Part B funds, which are the federal entitlement funds that come to the district from Washington to the State Department of Ed, and then gets dispersed based on a formula to us here. Those funds currently, and have been, it seems like for the past several years, very dedicated to salaries of staff, existing staff. So we need to look and see the programming that we need. Might there be the opportunity, not so much but a combination between tuition and contracted services maybe, to look at reallocating some of those funds next year if we get ahead of it. And then we'd look forward to subsequent year and saying, do we want to move a position out of the IDEA Part B funds and into the budget, because we absolutely believe, and here's all the evidence that we have that says we are obligated to have this position here in the district. And we don't want to do that until we've really analyzed and assessed the staff that we have, how we're committing the staff, looking at, equitable programs and services from one elementary school to the next, different grade levels from one grade level to the next. Same at the middle school and high school, really looking at providing those equitable services with the overwhelming majority of our students that are identified for special education are in our schools in receiving services and supports, most often in the general education setting, and with some pull-out instruction outside, into a special education setting, in a small group setting or individually, and then in the general ed setting with supports being brought into the classroom. So, and it's a very complicated dance. And then there, we have students that I'm sure, we could be looking at their individual needs first and then say, okay, how do they fit together collectively? It's not just by, it's this disability. It's needs, it's individual student needs, and designing the programs to support the individual needs in a way that's collective, that we can share resources among students. And that doesn't always mean it's a separate classroom. We have to look at that in the bigger picture, the general ed setting as well. You want to really look at aligning your resources to support your student needs, in whichever setting that might be.
One of the interesting aspects to add to this is that we're just talking about the expense side of this stuff.
That's right.
Now you gotta look at the income side of it.
Yeah.
And where do we get that from? The state. If a child is identified as a special needs, we start the $3,400 that the state gives us per child, and then they go down. English as a second language, if they get that check mark, they get some funds for that. Special education, it's about $1,700 per child that we get from the state. So $1,700 comes to us with that child that's been earmarked, that gets earmarked for the town, which is another issue that I think it should be looked at in our district, because we don't have a chargeback to the towns of sped and non-sped. It's all one classification. It's the average, of the cost. That includes special ed and non-special ed. But yet the funds that come back are, all the different towns have the number that's been identified. That number is well retained from that, so that $1,700 comes in and is actually added to on the tabs of each one of the 4 towns. But yet the proportionalment of students in there is there's no correlation with that. So that's what I think is one of the things that we have that's wrong in our articles of agreement, barring that, but that's a different issue.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into
Where-
that yet. I look
yeah,
forward to
we're-
it, though.
But the point that I'm trying to make is that I think we can come to easily to say that if a child has been identified as a special ed special ed needs, is that $1,700 doesn't even begin to even cover that cost.
Of course not.
Just like $3,400 doesn't cost it either, but it's the point is that is all being made on up, and you figure that the number of students that need these services and the dollar amounts that we're earmarking for that is a much larger percentage than what I think that we should, as a local district, have to handle on our own. So it's, once again, the feds and the state like putting down on these unfunded mandates, and then just say, you guys pay for it
Well, we're
at
funding
the
it.
local level.
They're saying it's unfunded, we're funding it.
Yes, but they're
Right.
making us, and it's not like we have a choice on it. And then it's, I understand, we want to, at the end of the day, it's got to get done, because, I think we all can probably agree that, it's got to be done. The inclusion aspect, I totally agree with all that. It's just that we're a smaller, bucket to amortize all that cost over than if you do it at a state level or a national level.
Right. And nationally,
I mean, we
when
could
they
talk
wrote the
hours about all
legislation,
this stuff.
yeah, when they wrote the legislation in 1975 and the percentage, they said, the federal government may fund up to 40% of the cost of special education, and they're never even close to that, and never have been. It's range in the 15 to 20-something% at best, and it seems to just keep dropping, but, so I think to answer the fiscal question, right, do we believe, yes, we believe that it's appropriate, the special education services and instructional supports are appropriately funded for both in and out of district. Do we believe that there might be the opportunity to look at developing programs sooner than later? That always exists, and oftentimes it exists because there aren't the outside resources, so the cost of outside tuition, out-of-district tuition, and the cost of those related services have skyrocketed. And in addition to the skyrocketing, there are fewer service providers, and more of the special education placements have gone away. Some shut down and didn't reopen, so there are fewer placements available, but also those out-of-district placements, just like us here, have really struggled to staff their facilities, so they're also bringing in fewer students. Oftentimes, where you used to be able to refer a child, they go through the referral process, they say, yes, this student is a good match for this program, we can meet their needs, where oftentimes now they're saying, it's an appropriate referral for our program, but we do not have the one-to-one that the child needs. So until, we're gonna try and hire one, we'll let you know when we get it hired, and then we'll tell you that we could have the student placed here. And oftentimes, they're not finding those staff, just like we aren't. A lot of times, that's what started the discussion about out-of-district placement here, is we couldn't fill the voids that we have. Want me to jump to transportation now?
Yeah, did you want to re-ask your question about transportation?
That was a while ago.
Not after that, he's saying, no,
I've learned my
I don't want to
lesson.
ask Chris.
You forgot about what the question was.
So was the question centered
It
around
was
why
about the
why the big
increase,
jump?
right?
So, yeah, transportation continues to go
Yes.
up, the cost. The student population is not keeping pace with that. It's not a parallel line. Is that just contracting? Simple yes or no will be accepted, Senator.
It is not, and I can't do it. Hey, you should, you're gonna get to know me. I can't, it takes me 5 minutes to say hello.
Maria, would you please?
No, so yes, it's because of the increases, it's same thing, it's because of finding drivers. That's, incredibly challenging, that's a national problem. So I can tell you, we're typically negotiating contracts, and you could call for a student and say, look, hey, instead of doing an RFP, can you give us we have a couple of years extension in our contract, you want to come forward with something, 1%, 2% increase, each year over, they don't even entertain it right now. No, we're looking at 8%, 9%, their costs, insurances, everything has gone up.
Thank you.
I have done ridership counts, and we'll continue to do monthly ridership counts to look at whether or not we can consolidate routes. The district already consolidated middle school and high school. So the ridership isn't so low on any route that it's, we have extra buses
It's
hanging
obsolete,
around.
understood.
And I would say, Mark, the voted, if you go back to fiscal year 2014 and go right along that line, the voted and the actual has been razor thin, right? On and on and on and on. And the only outlying years are when we weren't running buses, right? I mean,
Through COVID.
right? So fiscal year 20, fiscal year 21, we voted well over what was actually spent. But if you look at the trend of the increases, I mean, it looks like we're probably I'm just gonna guess, I mean, we're fully busing this year, right?
Yes.
We have
29 buses.
29, thank you, 29 large regular ed buses on the road, and there are 6 or 8 I have in-district special ed, and then about the same for out-of-district special ed right now.
So my crystal ball tells me that come July and August, the actual is gonna be darn close to 3,601,000 for the FY 22 voted. And I think if you look at the increase from that to what is being asked for, it's not a huge
So you're
increase.
comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I am.
And make no mistake, I think most districts, this size or larger, got back, $500,000 or didn't spend $500,000. They're trying to recoup that.
Yep.
Okay.
But a lot of that would be attributed to the direct labor that they would have had to pay that they didn't have to pay because they weren't paying people that weren't driving buses. So
Oh, yeah,
That's right.
you got to put everything in context.
absolutely.
Julie, did you have any questions? I keep forgetting you're on there. Or did you want to bring up anything on what's on the floor right now?
Nope, I think I'm agreeing with what I'm hearing, and just wanted to thank Maria again for all the reports it's great. I love looking at the trends and seeing everything. It really helps to clarify it and puts it in perspective how much stuff has increased. I mean,
Yep.
I do want to echo that as well. I mean, seeing this kind of data is stuff that I've always wanted to see in this district, and it's the first time it's really been presented. it's the way I think a school district should run, and we've seen other districts, that do provide this kind of information. I know Bedford's a big one about transparency and bringing out these kind of data, and it's nice to be added to that mix, and being part of this.
Here, here.
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna call the vote then. If we vote in the affirmative, then this is the number that we're going with. If you vote nay, then we can go for another motion, if that's your desire. But I think it's time to take action. We have everyone but Michael here. And I spoke to him earlier today, not that it matters because he doesn't have a vote at the table, but he was comfortable with what he's been seeing. As a matter of fact, he's the one that asked for the pie chart. So he, like Sean, has also been wanting this information as well for a long time. With that said, I'm going to say all for Sean's motion. Can you read the motion back, Carrie?
Okay. Sean McNeil motions to accept the proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 as presented of $75,623,607.
Just one caveat, I believe I did say to accept the budget as proposed by the administration.
Yes.
And just the way I'm reading this motion and why I present it that way is that we're accepting this as what they presented, bringing it, to this committee. It's been accepted. I would think that there would be, well, at least the way I would think that would be, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, to run this, would be a subsequent vote after. Now we're going to adopt it as this, because this is the recommended budget. Actually, we would adopt a budget. And if it's the same amount, then that's its own separate motion and so forth. But that's how I would propose that you do this. We're accepting it tonight.
Read it back to me.
I just changed it how he said it.
Okay.
So, Sean O'Neill motions to accept the budget as proposed by the administration for fiscal year 2023 of $75,623,607. Does that sound better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we
Okay.
amend the motion?
And your thought with that motion is that that's just what?
We're accepting it in, we're acknowledging that that's what's been transferred out of the administration to this committee as their proposal, for this. We're accepting that. Now it's very different than what this committee should recommend, is the adoption of
All
a
right, I can
budget.
get behind that. Yep. All right, I can get behind that.
Separate motion, or amend the motion.
You could amend it, but, I look at it as
You
two
want it
separate
to
things.
have
It
two
comes
separate
in,
motions.
now we're accepting that, that's the starting point, and then as we make changes up, down,
Right,
You would
so
have
we'll
new
do another
dollar
motion,
amounts.
we'll do another motion after this for adopting, okay? So, all in favor of Mr. O'Neill's motion, please raise your hand. All right, unanimous.
what's Julie doing?
Oh, sorry, Julie, yep, Julie. She's raising her hand. Sorry.
No,
Okay, so that's the number, we've had a lot of discussion.
Maria has a question.
Oh, go ahead, Maria.
I just want to make sure that I have a clear direction on what you want to do with the new position. Because as I have mentioned, this budget doesn't have a lot of cushion. For personal budget, I have to identify the specific funding for the position. So at the beginning, we said we were going to add it to this budget, but then Sue wrote the question if the funding was already in the budget and we can reallocate, which I will ask for some guidance on where you wanna cut the funding to fund the position, if that is the case.
I don't wanna cut funding. I want you to find it within the salary line.
Right, but she's
Potentially
identifying
through
another
attrition.
position. The salary line is already
Adding a position.
representative of a number of positions, right? That position is not built into this budget. So, Maria, that salary line, top line on this represents X number of actual positions and how many unfilled positions?
I believe there are 5 special education paraeducator positions that they're posted. They are not filled, but they are posted.
And that's it. There's no
Other
unfilled positions in that salary line.
I don't.
As far as you know.
Believe there are. The only one position is the. Please, and correct me if I'm wrong. What is the title of that position? The special education position that is open.
The, formerly the Student Services Coordinator that we've been interviewing for currently.
So you have money for that you have advertised in your,
Yes,
That's included in this.
that's in.
that is included, yes, it's not, yes.
That is part of the budget, but they are, the positions that are open in this budget, they are actually posted and we're actively looking to hire people. That doesn't mean that, I mean, it's your decision and the school board decision what you wanna do, but I just want to make sure that we have the funding
Budgeted.
budgeted in. Because the position was approved by the board.
Okay, so now we're at the point, people, where per Mr. O'Neill's motion, the number is on the floor. We've accepted the administration's budget number, 75,623,607. The next action would be to adopt either that number or by way of a motion to bring to the public hearing, or a motion to reduce and bring it to adopt X number, right, minus out whatever you're gonna minus out, or add. And that motion would, all 3 of these choices would be to adopt this budget and bring to the public hearing as our formal budget committee budget. All right? So
So,
I have an idea of what I'd like to do, but I'd like to see if anybody else wants to throw any motions out there, and
I'd
we
like
can
to
vote on
ask a
it.
couple
Go ahead.
clarifying questions to Maria. So Maria, you have a bottom line figure you want to add to that salary line?
130.
Is it 130, or is it more than
Yeah,
that?
is well, I will suggest to add $100,000 for the position and then the fringe, which is the benefits, which is about 30%. So yes, it will be 130,000, which that will put us into 75,753,000.
607.
And the justification for this other administration at the 11th hour of the budget
Well,
is,
it just happened at the last school board meeting.
School board meeting.
right?
Well, as you know, we have the new
I can
principal
speak
at the high school, and he has been really looking into and Chris probably can speak better to this than me, but he has really taken his time to go through the structure of the high school, to look at the programs that he has, to remap programs that aren't working as well. Like, he's a brand new principal, and he just came up to the board to request for this position that he truly sees the need for.
What I would recommend to this board would be is to have that, it's coming in at the 11th hour.
It is.
I admit, last school board meeting, it was brought on me, I didn't know anything about it as well.
Right there.
Let's bring it to the deliberative, let the people decide. The presentations are gonna be probably more detailed than what was presented to just us. There's no detail except for what Maria can say about it. And, it involves the high school principal, the avocation for that, he'll be there. It's the best of all worlds, all at one night. It's glamorous.
So wait to deliberative?
I will say this,
It's $130,000 out of a $75 million budget.
I agree. It's just, we've done that before, Sean. We've added a position in the 11th hour, and it affects the budget process and your process.
No, I agree.
So let me say a couple comments. So I do wish that had been part of the presentation, right? He presented here and why that didn't come up, I don't know. But maybe Chris could fill in some light for us here.
I had the same question, so I can't speak to actually why it didn't come up initially. but I can speak to what's being considered as far as the position goes. The position would be adding an assistant principal who would, one, just the structure of their day alone would be different in that they would start at probably about 11 o'clock, and they would go into the evening, and they would help to support the evening division, which there are a number of students that go to school in both worlds, basically, right? They do some day classes, they do some evening classes. This person would be the primary person to support alternative learning plans, extended learning opportunities, working with students who might be working towards HiSET or taking just a number of courses, like I said, either during the day or in the evening to complete their graduation requirements. They would work with school counselors and, any other programs. And they would like to look at building on the opportunities that might be available to students who, not only struggling learners, where, of course, that's a primary focus, students that may not have graduated in the past, or, similar students with profiles of students that we currently have now, that we're concerned about their ability to be able to graduate because of their low credit earnings, and as you start to get to that age of 18, it's harder and harder to keep kids engaged, or at that point, adults engaged in the learning process and towards their graduation. So really looking at creating opportunities for students and to promote additional supports to be able to get more students to graduate high school with a regular high school diploma through a variety of opportunities.
Okay. Sean, did the school board vote for this unanimously, for this position?
I don't know exactly the roll call vote on that, to be honest with you.
But it passed.
I think it
Passed.
was, but I don't remember exactly either.
So as the liaison, or the school board budget committee rep, is
And
it
if they
the will of
voted
the
for
school
it, which they
board?
did, but I don't know what budget, if they supported this budget in its entirety. All I can comment on is the proposal of 130,
wanted to
which
add this.
I don't know if that number was even put on the floor to talk about how much it was gonna cost in the next year's budget. It was just talking about the position, and then, we went in to approve it.
So there was no monetary association to this position at the school board meeting?
I don't believe
No,
there
it
was.
wasn't.
So we
The
didn't know what-
position was voted 7-0-0, so all the
Okay.
school board members that were in the meeting voted for it, so.
Okay. Look, we're all equal members of this budget committee. Anybody can make a motion right now. I'm gonna kick it off right now. I would like to make a motion to I would like to make a motion to add $100,000 to the salaries line and $30,000 to the benefits line, and for the budget committee to adopt and bring to the public hearing the number of
53.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion?
I'm gonna say right now for the record, I'm gonna be voting, I'm gonna abstain from this, cause like I said, I don't have the base number. It's not due to your adding it or not. I just threw that out as a suggestion, for the board to consider. So any kind of a dollar amount I'm gonna be abstaining for the sole purposes is I have no feedback from the school board as of this point.
That's
Not in its integrity, I can comment about that, but I'll reserve that until our third school board meeting.
Okay,
Well, you can
duly
carry-
noted.
Should this motion pass,
Right.
you can carry back.
Oh,
you
I'll
will
definitely carry back what
and
this
say,
committee did, but
they
I can't offer
listened
with
to
their
it.
input into here in in a vote for this, so that's why I feel I have to abstain from it.
Okay,
What I think would have been proper would be that the principal have been here tonight and made a presentation. And thank you, Chris, for knowing what you know, but it's his building, and we were listening to him as a stakeholder. And we're gonna stop saying they're all new. Everybody's new. No, we're not new now. You've been working. Moving on. You made a budget. Let's move on.
I'm not defending
Todd.
him not talking about it, but yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I do support what Stu was just saying, and I do kind of, I do wish that he had had that in his budget presentation, or the thought that he was thinking about it at the time. It really wasn't that long ago that he presented his budget.
Right, it was the last one we heard.
So, not that I'm against it, that it might not be a needed position, but I'm just not a fan of things getting thrown in at the last second.
So listen, I'm not saying I'm for or against it. I just made the motion to get it out onto the floor. And to echo what you're saying, so yes, I agree that he should have brought that up if that was something he was thinking. That said, from a budget perspective, they weren't presenting salaried employees. And they don't come and do that.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
present a budget of what they need for their building to operate, right? And so, but that said, he was in front of us, and that could have been a good opportunity to say, here's what's going on, you know, I'm looking to hire an assistant principal. I don't know that that the numbers would have come out in that, but it would have at least gotten us thinking that we have another, you know, another administrator that's gonna be added to the mix, so.
I can say I know there were discussions that were happening prior. I'm unsure if he was waiting for particular feedback.
Okay.
So there were discussions happening prior. He had started that process prior to presenting his budget. I believe he may have been waiting for additional feedback, and timing didn't support him bringing it forward at that time.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, the need is there. The school board thinks the need is there. It's really more of a numbers thing, right? And we're a little unsure on that, although I trust Maria, and I trust that Maria has a good sense of what this is going to cost from both a salary and a benefit. I respect your abstention, Sean, because we don't know the exact number. But the motion is what the motion is, so we can continue discussing. If anyone has anything else to say about it, and then I'll call for a vote. All right, I'm gonna call for a vote. All in favor? Six in favor? Nay? One nay. Abstention? Motion passes. Okay.
So now the bottom line is what we're carrying to the public.
$75,753,607.
And that's going towards the January
Public
public
hearing.
hearing. Do we know the exact date of that yet?
It's January 15th, Carrie, actually,
No,
No,
one
it's
here.
not on there.
No,
Is
January 13th.
Thursday, January 13th.
13
13th,
at the PAC.
yes.
The pack at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Sean, do you know about any warrant articles that the school board might be proposing?
We have not identified any as
At
of
this point?
as of this point.
I mean, other than the standard ones?
Yeah. And those, even the normal ones, we haven't even discussed yet.
Okay, so we have our number for the public hearing. Any other business that you know of, Maria, or anyone at the table?
I don't have anything else, no.
Okay, so, we are gonna keep the meeting for the 23rd as a tentative. If anything were to arise between now and then, and there's a need for us to come back here and meet and vote to adjust between now and the public hearing, it's a good, we use the word
Placeholder.
buffer a lot. So that's a good buffer, it's a good buffer meeting. Should, anything arise, like another administrator being added or something like that. But for now, this is the number that we're gonna go to the public hearing, which again, Maria said is the 13th. I'd like to ask each of you, because I don't know when your term ends, but Carrie is trying to gather that information. I know mine ends in March of what does it say on that paper? 2023? I do know, but some people, as I was trying to tell Carrie before, took over. Mr. Hughes used to be on the budget committee. He only served a year, and Christy ran for his, so she has a 2-year seat. I'm not sure. I don't keep track of that. So if you could please email Carrie when your term is up so that she's gathering that information for, I think it's Article 1 in the, or warrant Article 1 on what's going to go out on the ballot in March.
And if there's a filing period, so we need to know, they'd need to know in the front office, filing, so you'd be notified when the filing period is open.
If you know it now, we could just go around the table. as
Actually,
other
the
business.
SAU should be the one that knows this and keeps a track of it.
I know.
Because they're the ones
Has to
that
paper
generate
round.
the district report and so forth.
But she's in the
should
SAU,
have this.
she doesn't know. Do you know, did you run for a 3-year term? So Julian is 24.
2022,
So
it was a one-year seat.
it was a 1-year seat, okay, 2022. Oh. What are we doing, just doing a
Just
check mark?
checking.
Yep.
Just a little check.
And the town, she's got some of the towns wrong, so.
I didn't check the towns.
Let's see, where you live, yeah, that's right.
All right, you know what, though, that's other business. With that said, if you could just stick around for a second when we adjourn the meeting and just double check and make sure that this is correct for Carrie. Does anyone have anything else before we adjourn? All right, with that said, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting at 8:36. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.